Um, I grew up out in the country for the majority of my life, and as soon as I got a car, I drove straight into Lincoln and started hanging out at the coffee house pretty much every night until I moved out of town for a while. But every moment I spent in Lincoln, I was at the coffee house pretty much. And it was such a really, I think it was more educational going to the coffee house every night than it really was even going to high school, because I learned how to socially interact with people and, have empathy for people that are not just the same age as me and stuff like that, a diverse amount of people, and really just kind of learn how to develop a community and be a part of a community and all those things. So, I loved the coffee house. It was my home, and luckily I was able to actually get a job there too, and actually participate on the other side of the business, which is the actual barista work. And that was some of the happiest times in my life, because it was kind of a dream job, and I really just loved being a part of the coworker family that was there, and learning all kinds of great things from Mark, who owns the coffee house, and it was just a really good time. And then, I had to leave the coffee house. My daughter was born, and I had to have a little bit more of a responsible job, a little bit more lucrative job where I'd be able to make more hours, and my friend Nate, who's worked at coffee shops before, said, we should really open a coffee shop, because he loved coffee shops too and stuff like that. So I was like, all right, let's try it out. I had no idea that we'd be able to find the funding or anything like that. It was just kind of a pipe dream. But luckily we were able to find the funding, and about 4 months later, Meadowlark was open. So it all came together real quick, and luckily we had the space next to Open Harvest, and it's been pretty successful.
All right. Our topic, our chapter today is about human resources, so that's the area we're chatting with you about. And so, when you started in terms of people, was it just starting out the two of you, and then did you eventually, obviously you've got a whole cast of employees now, so when did you?
Well, yeah, it just started off as Nate and I. I mean, we think liberally, but we really act conservatively. We weren't going to hire anybody until we knew that we could extend ourselves to pay for somebody else. And I was working during the day, and he was working at night for about 2 months. It was just him and I working every day. Me working during the day, him closing at night. And, things got busier and busier and busier until about the beginning of June, where we were like, okay, things are getting busier. We really need some support, because things are just too busy for us to keep up with, and the customers are, having to wait longer than they should have to and stuff. So then we hired Spencer, who was a friend of somebody who worked at Eyes of the World, and he was actually helping us out with our open mic. He was hosting it, and so I kind of saw that he was really into the business. So, all right, be part of the group. And actually, before Spencer too, my sister-in-law was helping us too. So, we knew that we could depend on her, and she's a hard worker and stuff like that. So she was the first employee, and then Spencer came along. And then the same night we hired Spencer, Deb, who used to work at the coffee house, and who now owns Jones Coffee, we hired her. And the way that when we first hired people, it was really just by word of mouth, oh, I hear you guys need help, keep us in mind. And so, and they would hand in applications and stuff too. And, we were so busy too at the time, just keeping on working and working and working, that we really never had a chance to really sit down and overlook applications like I do now. And so we hired Christine, who was another friend of somebody who worked at Eyes of the World. So it was kind of a networking situation at the beginning. Deb just came in and said, I really need to work here because I don't like my job and I have to work here. And I was like, yeah. And I've always really respected Deb because she's always been a very hard worker and very motivated. So we brought her aboard, and then right when we hired everybody is when we had an article in the Journal Star, and that's when like everything just exploded. Like we doubled our sales, and everything, and it was just the right amount. We hired people just in time to be able to carry that workload, and it worked out really well. And luckily, most of the people that we hired already had previous experience, and they were able to kind of just start up and not take a lot of training, and really easy to just go.
So how have your hiring practices changed? Like, do you do things different now?
Yeah, we do things a lot more formally. Like, it used to be where, I've hired friends before in the past and people that I've known, and sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes people, because you know them so well, feel that they get a lot more slack than someone that doesn't. And people have been fired because of that, I think. You're just like, hey, this is a job and you have to work, and you can't just, not work. Just because you're my friend, I'm not going to give you a paycheck. So now it's more about trying to find people kind of on the peripheral of, because everybody in town knows about Meadowlark pretty much, and so if they come in and they're interested in the business and they have an application and they have experience and stuff like that, I'm way more apt to hire them, especially if they have experience. Usually what I do is I give 2 weeks for the applications to come in, then I look through all the applications and kind of just weed them out. Like, if there's anything fishy at all about the app, I just throw it out. And if there's, I look for, experience automatically. If they have experience, then I'm going to put them in the save pile. And then I look into that pile, and then I pick 3 applicants, the 3 best apps. And then I have those interviews, and the interviews for me isn't really, for me an interview is about getting to know them and their personality, and knowing if they'd be able to mesh with what we already have. So, the first step is knowing that they have the skills and they know what they're getting into as far as being a barista. And then the second part is if they have the personality to fit within what we already have. Because here you have to work hard and yet not be stressed and have a good time and really develop the community and get to know people.